Don't let anyone leave! The lights were only out for a few seconds. The thief must still be in the room.
NYPD, nobody move! And you, I don't need any girl detective tripping over my crime scene.
I think it's time we did some sightseeing that isn't on the official tour.
Chapter 5. The frame is empty. The air in the penthouse had turned cold, a draft whistling through the service entrance that Julian Vane had vanished through. Detective Murphy was busy barking orders at his men, his notebook flipping open as he rounded up the disgruntled socialites. To the police, the crime was a smash and grab in the dark, but to Nancy and Miss Marple, the empty frame told a much more calculated story. "Bess, stay here and keep an eye on Arthur Sterling," Nancy whispered, her eyes fixed on the door. "He's the most vulnerable person in the room right now, and I don't like the way that man in the tuxedo was watching him." "Be careful, Nancy," Bess replied, clutching her evening bag. "And Miss Marple, please, don't let her do anything to River Heights." Miss Marple smiles gently. "I shall be the very picture of discretion, dear." Nancy and Jane Marple slipped through the private door, entering a narrow, dimly lit corridor that smelled of turpentine and floor wax. At the far end, the heavy iron gate of the service elevator was just sliding shut. Nancy lunged forward, but she was too late. The indicator dial above the door began to spin slowly toward the basement. "He's heading for the loading docks," Nancy said, her pulse quickening. "But why would the artist flee his own unveiling?" "In St. Mary Mead," Miss Marple mused as they hurried toward the stairs, "young Tommy Bond once stole his own bicycle just so his father would buy him a newer, faster model. It was a very clever bit of theater, though his mother noticed the oil on his trousers soon enough. One must wonder if Mr. Vane is simply a victim or a very talented actor." They descended the concrete stairwell, their footsteps echoing against the stark walls. When they reached the ground floor, they emerged into a sprawling, cavernous garage used for art deliveries. The space was filled with crates, bubble wrap, and the skeletal shadows of parked trucks. Near a large bay door that opened onto a dark alley, Nancy spotted the dark beret, the same one Miss Marple had noticed at the pier. The man was speaking in hushed, urgent tones to Julian Vane. Between them sat a flat, rectangular object wrapped in heavy brown paper. "It's the painting," Nancy whispered, crouching behind a stack of empty frames. "They didn't just slice it out, they had a replacement ready to go." "Look closer at the paper, Nancy," Miss Marple prompted, her voice barely a breath. "The way the light hits it, it isn't just brown paper. It's the same heavy, lead-lined wrapping Mr. Sterling used for his portfolio on the ship." Suddenly, the man in the beret pulled a silver-plated palette knife from his pocket, not for painting, but held like a weapon. "You were supposed to have the money ready, Vane. I did my part. The switch was perfect." "I told you, the gallery hasn't processed the insurance yet," Vane hissed, his voice trembling. "Just take it to the warehouse near the river. We'll wait for the heat to die down." Nancy reached for a heavy metal canister nearby, intending to create a distraction, but her foot caught on a stray piece of wire. A loud clang shattered the silence of the garage. The man in the beret spun around, his eyes wild. "Who's there?" Before Nancy could move, a third figure stepped out from the shadows behind the smugglers. It was the man in the tuxedo from the party, and he wasn't looking for a missing masterpiece. He was holding a heavy black revolver. "I'll take that, both the painting and the artist. It seems tonight's performance has a very unexpected final act. Nancy looked at Miss Marple. The elderly woman wasn't afraid. She was looking at the tuxedoed man's shoes. Patent leather, dear. Much too shiny for a common thief. He's a professional, a very dangerous professional.